A critical Splunk Enterprise vulnerability has moved from advisory to active exploitation, raising the stakes for organizations running affected versions. Our top enterprise story this week is a critical flaw in Splunk Enterprise that is now being exploited in the wild. Splunk is the logging and security analytics platform a lot of companies use to collect what's happening across their network in real time. For example, firewall events, server logs, authentication records, endpoint alerts, and cloud activity. In a lot of environments, Splunk is where blue teams and IT build dashboards, alerts, and investigate operational or security issues, all from a single location. So a critical vulnerability in Splunk is especially problematic because it's in a tool that defenders depend on to know what happened in their environment. The vulnerability affects Splunk Enterprise 10.0 and 10.2 releases, before the fixed versions. Splunk Enterprise 9.4 and earlier are not affected, and Splunk Cloud is not affected because Splunk says Cloud does not use the vulnerable PostgreSQL sidecar. The flaw is in that PostgreSQL sidecar service. A sidecar is basically a companion service that runs alongside the main application. In this case, the problem is that the sidecar endpoint was missing authentication controls. That means an attacker who can reach the vulnerable service over the network can invoke file operations without logging in. Splunk's advisory describes the direct impact as arbitrary file creation and file truncation. In other words, an unauthenticated attacker can create files on the Splunk server or wipe existing files down to 0 bytes. Now, that's pretty serious by itself, but on a system like Splunk, file access can become much more than just file access. If an attacker can write to the right location, they may be able to plant code, tamper with configurations, or interfere with the data that defending teams rely on. Splunk published the advisory on June 10th. On June 18th, the company updated it to say its product security team had become aware of limited exploitation of the vulnerability. CISA also added the flaw to its Known Exploited Vulnerabilities catalog the same day. The main condition for exploitability here is reachability. The attacker does need network access to the vulnerable Splunk service, so if that service is exposed to an untrusted network, the risk goes up exponentially. Splunk's guidance is straightforward. Upgrade Splunk Enterprise to version 10.4.0, 10.2.4, or 10.0.7 or later. If you can't upgrade immediately, Splunk says you can disable the PostgreSQL sidecar service as a mitigation by setting Postgres to disabled in the local server configuration and restarting Splunk.